Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the law of attraction, manifesting success stories show comes in. If you are ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello and welcome to this episode. I am your host, Cassie Parks, and I am back with Kate Kretzinger of K8 for Wellness. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Cassie. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for being here. If you've been following along on Kate's journey, this is her second series together, but it's actually her 11th interview in the Year of Growth series, as she's been in the Enchanted Circle for 16 months, which is so cool. We were talking a little bit about before. How does that say when I say, oh, you've been in here for 16 months?
It feels like it was yesterday, but it also feels like it was so long ago.
Right?
I don't know how that can happen, feel both of those, but it does. It's like, oh my gosh, that seems like yesterday. And then I was like, oh, but if you think about it, all the growth that I've done, it feels like it's been longer than that. So
yeah, I think that's what happens is when you start growing really fast, like things feel a lot longer because there's a lot happening, right?
Those first I want to say more than 6 months, maybe the first 8.
Mm-hmm.
It was like huge leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this before in just a recent one. It's still growth, but it's just deeper. So so it's not as dramatic. I don't want to say dramatic because that's not a good word either, but it's just not as huge as it was in the beginning. Like it moved a lot in the beginning.
And I think it's a combo of both. You learn what super growth feels like. Mm-hmm. So it starts to feel less dramatic.
Yes.
And then like you said, like it goes deeper. So, and what that often means, I think, is we go deeper internal and there's the external is different, right? Because it's not like you're not manifesting money. Because what's your new total?
My new total is $142,478.71. Yay.
Like, those external things are still happening. And I think it's just those, we feel it deeper and it takes more, we're just changing more inside, which is naturally changing the outside, but it just feels different.
Yes, much different. And it's funny because I know when it's coming. Kind of like what I said before the call.
Yeah.
Like I know something big's coming.
Well, so tell us a little bit about that. Like how, growth and change is coming. How do you know? Because 16 months, you've learned what it feels like, what it looks like before it comes.
Yeah. And I think, kind of like what we were saying before when we started talking, it's more along the lines of, for me, I think my actions versus putting it into feelings, because I do feel it. And I think it's just because I'm an energetic person and I'm aware of people's energy, especially my own and how I feel.
Yeah.
So I know it's coming because I feel it. I don't feel like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of it. But the other thing is also my actions too. And catching myself, I think more talking to myself, like, okay, what can you do to make yourself happy? What can you do to activate that feeling? And I notice I'm saying it more these past couple of weeks than, and I think when we talked about it too is, it was a month ago because I moved into my house about a month ago.
Yeah.
I think that, I think both of this is the first time you and I are both hearing this because I think I'm just coming to this realization is I think the internet was a good excuse because I didn't have the internet to do the stuff that I needed to do.
Right.
And I kept using that as, okay, I'll get back to my routines, and I don't like calling them routines, but my rituals. And, I'll get back to that when we get the internet. I'll get back to that when we get the internet. And here it is, almost a month later, we still don't have the internet. And I remember you asking me, is it because you're busy, truly busy, or is it? And I felt like it was in the beginning because I was truly busy, but that's not an excuse anymore. So, paying attention to that and having more awareness of that too, like those kind of actions,
Yeah.
makes me know that there's a lot of resistance going on. And when there's resistance, there's growth. For me, that's how I grow, is that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we forgot money. Like, remember I wasn't keeping track of my money the past few months. So I kind of went back to my old survival story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But doing it in a sneaky way.
Right. Yeah. We get better because we're aware, like we can no longer convince ourselves that like, it's just okay. Right. And so we do it sneaky, or we don't tell our coach that we're doing it. Right.
Oh, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that at all. That is so funny.
Yeah.
Who did that?
I know. I'm sure there's not anyone in this interview.
I don't know. Yeah. So I think, actions definitely, and how I feel are the keys now for me, knowing that growth is coming. Absolutely. Yeah.
And would you have, I had the question I want to ask, but it's because it looks like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. That's not even the right words, but it like kind of on paper, right? It looks like, oh, things are wrong, but you're aware enough, and now you've been through this process enough that you're like, no, this means growth is coming, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me, maybe it was last week on our call, our group session, you said, you got to raise your prices. That's what happens. And I'm like, and that's what I think where the resistance started, right? That's when I was more aware. When you said that, I was more aware that it's definitely resistance that's happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think it's great though, because I'm welcoming it more. Like before, I don't know, it just feels different this time around.
Mm-hmm.
The resistance feels different than it did before. And, yeah. And that is something that maybe I can say more after I've worked through it. But like right now it's, I just know it feels different and that it's coming. And I know it's right there. It is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing in this time? Like you're showing up, right? You're still showing up and you're being there. What if anything else are you doing? Are you just sitting with like, okay, I know it's going to come, because eventually there comes a moment where I almost want to say it's it's similar to inspired action, but I want to hear what you say. Like we can sit in that resistance, we can sort of play the game, we can move the chairs around, but eventually like we're going to make a move, right? Like,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so what are you doing in that time? How are you handling the time right now?
It's funny you say that, because I think in the past I would ignore it. I would sit still. I'm like, okay, 5 minutes. I'm sitting still. All right, nothing's speaking to me. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a hike. I'm going to go for a bike ride, because all those make me happy anyway.
Right.
So it's you're all about teaching us and coaching us to activate the happy feelings and or the feel good feelings that bring that joy to us. And so I took that as, okay, I'm going to go do this as often as I want. I was really running away from the feelings, not really feeling them. And I remember one time you told me, I want you to sit and don't go for a walk. Don't. And I didn't know what to do with myself at that point. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to sit in my head. I have to listen to that. What's going on? But that was like the best advice, I had ever gotten. And to really feel what that is, it's, I feel that I'm doing that more now. And sometimes it's hard and I shared this with you before we started recording, sometimes it's hard because of the people that I'm surrounded by. Right. And because I love the center that I'm here with the women, it's just sometimes I don't get that quiet space. So then I go home and I've got family and I don't got quiet space, so I don't think I've had enough time to really truly feel it. So I'm not judging it and I'm not forcing it. So I'm just letting it happen organically. And, but I'm still like you said, showing up. I'm still, dressing like my future self would, so that I get that feeling of confidence and that feeling of feeling sexy and classy. I still do that. Other than today, I didn't do that today, but I still do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, I do it because it makes me feel better, and I try and activate that happy feeling. I still do my morning rituals of moving and what have you. So I'm still showing up in those aspects. And I'm anxious, and I think I shared this with you a couple of days ago. I'm anxious to get my scripting ritual back into play too. And I think that's where most of the resistance is coming from, because that script is about becoming my future self that has a lot of clients online.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's where the resistance is coming from. So that's not happening like it used to. I mean, I think I've done it a couple times since I've been in the new house.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that, I mean, it's in my head. I'm doing it in my head, but it's not the same as if I were to type it up and put it in my sheet. It's totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because I even say, like, when I'm on my walk, I'm like, oh, that's part of my script that, so I do, it's there.
Mhm.
It's still
Yeah.
there. That's showing up that way,
Right.
but I'm not showing up 100%. So
yeah. And that's so you're not judging it, right?
no,
Because you know what it is.
exactly. Yep. And I'm
Right.
okay with that. And I don't want to force it either, because I don't think that's going to do me any good if I force it. So I don't know if I
Right.
answered your question. I just kind of rambled there.
No. I mean, yes, that was what I wanted, was just because I think people everyone wants to know, like, what do we do in that space? When I'm like, I'm not fully ready to go in, but I'm like, having all this stuff. So I just wanted you to share, because I mean, that's very similar to what I do. Is I just know, like, like, I'm just going to be here and I'm going to feel it, and I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to notice what's happening. I'm going to notice if I'm avoiding this, or I'm not quite doing this, and just noticing it in those spaces of growth. And because it's really, I think we could even maybe shift, and I want to hear your perspective. Resistance in this moment, we could say it's resisting growth, but I think what it is just preparing.
Yeah, that's
right?
a better word.
Like, it's just, okay, I just need a little more time to feel a little more grounded. I need to get a little more behind, like, understand the idea before I like leap all the way into it,
That's a
and
great
like,
way to
I know
put
who
it.
that person is, but yeah,
Yep.
I'm
That's
just
a great
not
way.
ready to go in yet.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Because I think when we were talking about that, that's exactly it. That's the best way to say it. And I think you're right. It's not the resistance that I need to use. It's being ready for it and being ready to step fully into it. Because I think how that really showed up for me was when you had asked me, it was at talking about raising my prices. And then you were like, what feels good? And I used a number that you and I talked about before. And I did it because I knew it felt good at that moment in time when you and I talked about it. And I know that we talk all the time that anything can change. It can change at any time. But you asked me to really sit with it and feel if that number felt right. And I've been trying, and nothing feels right now. So that lets me know that that's what I need to do. Because I've been putting it back and forth. I like pick out a number and I'm like, no, that doesn't feel right. Oh, no, that doesn't feel right either. Like nothing feels like, yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's not so much resistance, it's just being ready for it, being prepared.
Being prepared.
Yeah.
You
so
brought
funny.
up the numbers, so I want to point that out, is that, and we'll keep you updated on what the number ends up being, but the real, as you said, the number, I remember it was maybe a year or a little bit less, give or take, that we came up with that number, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
This process of growing into this, it didn't just start like 2 months ago, or it started almost a year ago, right?
Yes. What's even funnier now that you're saying this, all this is coming back to me. Do you remember, I do remember the first time you brought that number up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh God, there's so much I want to say about this too, but we talked when you said the number needs to rate. Actually, it was even a couple months ago, it came up again.
Yes. Yep.
And you told me to write it in 5 different places so that I could get used to it.
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet. That was, oh my gosh, that was the first, that's when it started. I had, oh my gosh, I'm just having an aha here. Okay, so that's interesting. That is super.
Yeah. That is, yeah. And is that when that's when the resistance started?
Yes, that is exactly when the resistance started. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat.
Both of us, and we're not even in the same space.
I know, this is so funny. I'm an empathy person, so I'm feeling your, I'm feeling it. So I think it's so funny because, you know, when you had mentioned that back, like you said, probably a year ago, maybe less than that. I remember when you said that, I instantly changed my program agreement to the pricing. And then that's when I had some online stuff going on, and it wasn't my ideal paying clients. They were paying clients, but they're not my ideal, right?
Yeah.
Because that came from a place of desperation when we put that together. And we did talk about that in a past podcast. But if you think about it, it was so funny. Like when I closed down my online program before I revamped it, I closed that down. So then I dropped my price individual for the individual sessions. And I remember, it was so funny because I remember you saying to me, well, wait a minute, when did that price change? And I think that was like months and months and months after it happened. And it's funny because even David said it to me. He's like, shouldn't you talk to Cassie about that first? And I think you even said it to me, like, we need to talk about this before you do that stuff. It was so funny how that happened. Like, just all that backstory. I don't know if you remember that happening.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I was like, wait, why is that the price? Because I think and it wasn't even like I was asking the price. Like, you're like, I have this many clients. And then you said the amount of money. And I was like, that something's not right. Like, it doesn't add up for me. Like, I don't think that's what she was charging.
Yep. That's exactly how it played out, actually. Exactly like that. So quickly I forget. Yeah. So really that was over a year ago that we were trying to get me to step into that and to grow into that and to be more that person. So, so I think that's the growth that's going to happen.
I think it's pretty, that's what's
pretty
happening,
evident.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. And that's what I like, highlight for people listening too, is it's just a number. And yet it's all this other, like, there's so much behind it. And it's not just about how much more will you be bringing in or what, feeling okay about, having someone invest that in you. It's really who you have to be, what that number represents, right? It's that growth.
Absolutely.
And that can be a process, and it starts with like one incident, and all of this has been growing to this moment, right? All of this has been preparation, and you've still been moving forward, and you've still been manifesting money and having clients and doing all the things while getting ready for this now big. I feel like you're going to feel the big leap again. Maybe not.
I think I will.
Yeah.
I think I am.
Yeah.
I really think I am, because it feels different, like I was saying. So I think it's definitely going to be like that. Because I remember when the first time, like you said, the big leap, when that first happened, that I think was kind of the same thing. And I don't think we can use resistance as the word. I think you're hitting it right on the nose when you say I got to be that person first before I can. So if I think about that and think about how it went down in the past, it's the same exact thing. But I'm just more aware of it now, which is nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So it feels better, I guess, is the best way to say that, because I remember, well, when I first brought it up to you, there were tears. So I think like I'm moving through all of the emotions through it, and that the tears didn't last very long. They were very brief. And I remember when I first went through it, it was tears all the time.
Right.
So it definitely you get better and at understanding what's going on, and you're more aware of it. And it's just allowing you to feel those feelings and to go through. Cause before I wasn't feeling the feelings. I was doing other things. Even though I was crying, I was doing other things. I wasn't sitting with it. So
Right.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is like
Yeah.
all aha for me right now.
I know, it's amazing to look back and go, yeah, okay, that was that. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And doing this is, I think, one of the best things you can do for your growth and your continued growth, because you remember it. You're like, oh, yeah, that's how that played out. Okay, yeah, that's how that felt. Oh, yeah. And you can see how it's all been working, which increases, interestingly enough, earlier today when Kate and I are recording this interview, Jenny and I just did a episode on like faith and manifesting. And what you're doing is you're building all of that faith muscle, that trust muscle in this is the process, and also getting to know your own growth journey, because we all are journey growth process. We all have one. Once we look back, we can see like, oh yeah, I cry and I avoid this, and I definitely do this in this area. Yeah. So once we can better understand our own process, we just become aware, and it's easier not to judge, right? And we don't get down that spiral of, oh, I'm not doing what I should be doing, and this and that and all these other things. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I think that's the biggest growth for me, is the not judging and being okay with not doing all the rituals that I normally do, and being okay with that. That's huge for me. And always, kind of pointing the finger at myself. And I haven't done that this time, which is really great. So, and I think that was the first thing I said to you when I wasn't able to do my scripting at first. I was like, oh, but I'm okay with that. It feels good. It doesn't feel bad. And honestly, it still feels okay. It doesn't, because I'm not judging it.
Right.
That's what I'm realizing. It's because I'm not judging it. That's why it feels okay.
I think that, and you've evolved, and you might have thought this in the beginning, but typically most people think, well, like if I'm not scripting, or I'm not doing my rituals, I'm not doing this, I'm not moving forward. And so talk about, because I don't think you believe that. You might have believed that in the past, but you don't believe that anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't. I remember though, in the beginning I did. Because remember, you told me not to stop. You told me to stop scripting in the beginning. And it was before I even have a workshop. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean I got to stop scripting? This is like what makes me feel happy. This is what's going to help me grow. So that was the first time I had to experience that. But yeah, totally. I don't feel that, that just because I can't do that, I'm not growing at all. I think I see it more that I've grown now in this time than ever, then I know I've grown a lot, but I'm realizing it more now than ever, because of how I'm able to, not, say, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. So that to me lets me know that I've grown a lot. So I think that is a huge step for me in noticing that and recognizing it and not judging myself for it. So yeah, because I always used to think if I didn't do the work, it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So I think the biggest aha for me was when we had started the business group, and I was doing them like all back to back. You're like, no, slow down. You're like, okay, do one, sit with it for a couple of days. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
A couple of days. I would have settled for like a couple of hours.
Yeah, I wasn't even doing a couple hours, like one right after another. So yes, and it feels good to pop in there when I feel inspired to do it, because like I said, I haven't had any internet. So the past couple of weeks, I've jumped on and I've scripted when it felt good to do it, instead of me forcing it to do it. So
that's awesome. And what a
yeah, it's real awesome. Yeah.
And so would you say you're still, because the work is, scripting is part of the work, and then there's all this other stuff that comes with it, which is the stepping in and the growing into your future self. And you would still say, I'm doing the work right now, right? Would you still say I'm doing the work, like processing and feeling and acknowledging, like all of that is still the work that's going to get you where you want to go?
Yes, definitely. And I think that is the biggest picture here, is still doing all the other stuff, like being present and doing the things that make you happy, and sitting with the feelings, like you said. All of that stuff is just as important as me scripting. It's not any different. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I love that you can say that now, because I definitely, I know when you started, like, no, this is the work that has to
Yes.
be done. No, sitting still is just as important.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And I think we even, part of that too is who I surround myself with, and how I want to have this kind of conversations all the time, like the Ginny and Cassie conversations. I want to be surrounded with everybody like that. And I do get that here at the center, but I also want it in my, like my mastermind group. And I think that was just so funny when you and I were talking about that. And I was like, I just want that next level. I'm just searching for that next level. And I started listening to a podcast, and I was like, well, that's not it. And I just thought that was really cool that I think you kind of picked up on it, and you've created this business circle for us now, the Enchanted Business Circle, for those that want to have that next step to, incorporate it in our businesses. And so, I just thought that was really cool that you honed in on that too. So we've got not only just what's going on in our life, and it's also in our business now too. And that was the next step that I needed. And I think that's also is what helped this stepping into my next self here, why it's coming so much faster. I think it was because of that.
I agree. Because now it's like there was a space, because, going back to sort of the beginning, and like I would put one of the preparing for growth or resistance things is that for anyone listening, is like, if you're not telling your coach something, that is probably like a thing. And so, and everybody does it. It's part of growth, right? We're saying it's normal, and it's part of that. But, I think a big way that the Enchanted Business Circle, I want to talk about how you're researching stuff too, but the way that it also supported you is it made you come and have to talk about business, versus before it could be like, oh, I'm not going to mention that. It's not for this call, it's not, it doesn't relate directly. There's all these reasons not to bring it up. And now there's this space. And so, it's pushed that growth right up to the top. Like, okay.
You don't have a choice now. You're going to grow.
Right. Yeah. And I want to go back to that. You were, what I loved, because, I could see it. I was like, oh, you're kind of telling me about this book, or you're kind of doing these things. And that was really when I looked, and I was like, okay, it's time to offer something more, because you needed a next level, a next thing. Right.
Yes.
And I remember I'd even asked you about 6 months ago, like, are you still getting what you need?
Yep.
And you were like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then, which I think you were, I don't think that was a hiding, or it was like, no, I am. It just was you were taking information a little bit different, and still doing everything. And then, but yeah, I love how you, I don't know if you remember it, but you listened to a podcast, and you were going to go check out something. And then you told me, no, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel in alignment. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that's not what I'm working towards. It's not anything that will pertain to me. Because I'm constantly listening to podcasts to grow and to get information from my clients, that kind of stuff. And then I'll listen to a business one here or there. And that's exactly what you're referring to. Was at one time I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to this. And I was like, no, that's not what Cassie would have us do. And so I don't need to listen to that. So I stopped it.
I love it. How did it feel to be that certain? Like, no, that's not going to get me where I want to go.
Oh, it felt amazing. And it's kind of like too, what I say to people, you can't have multiple coaches. You got to have one. Because they don't all see the same way. One of the things that I see people asking other people these questions all the time, and they're asking the same question to multiple people. And why would I want all that information in my head if it's not working towards the goal that the bigger picture, right? So we know what the bigger picture is. If it's not, like, why would you want all of these coaches telling you
Right.
what to do? You're just going to get, well, for me, I shouldn't say you, me, I just get all the like information overload that I just freeze
Mm-hmm.
and I don't do anything. So, to me, it's just, okay, one coach. I'm going to listen to one person.
Mm-hmm.
This person, meaning Cassie, knows me and knows it knows my future self and knows what I'm working towards. So why would I want to listen to someone on a recording that has no idea who I am and has no idea what my business is about? So yeah, it felt empowering. Actually, it was very empowering.
Hey, I love that.
Yeah.
And that is why I started the business circle. So because when you're going to grow your business, you need somebody who understands your future self. Otherwise, someone can give you a strategy that might work, but if it doesn't lead you to the life you want, it's a waste.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Um,
Agreed.
yeah. And so real quick, can you give us like an overview, because you have moved into the Enchanted Business Circle. That happened a couple months ago.
Yep.
And as we go through that and then continue to watch this evolution, because we're shifting your business, we're evolving your business, which is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just give us a little quick background. How did it start? How did you start building? And then we'll talk a little bit about where you're going.
Yeah. So it's still, I know you said you just briefly said you wanted to do this, and I'm still trying to remember how it all started.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to, and it hasn't been that long, but it's just how it all started. So I know that for me, it's important for me to have balance and important for me to have my rituals every day, because I feel that I can't show up for my clients if I don't have that. And I have to be able to be there for them 100%. And as you know, because you're a coach too. So we have to be on. When we're with them, we're on and not worried about, oh, am I going to work out tonight? What am I going to have for dinner? What am I going to do this? What am I going to do that? So for me to be able to do that and be there for them 100%, I've got to do my stuff, my self-love stuff. And so that's what I want to build my business around that too. I want to be able to still have that. I don't want to be the one that lets all that stuff go just to grow my business. And that's why I left corporate. Right. So when I first started, I ended up getting a lot of clients, and it just filled my day. And I see my clients for 50 minutes, 50. And then that just gave me, if they left on time, only 10 minutes until the next client came. And so being one person, I could only fill so many people into a day that it got to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to make more money? This isn't going to pay out the bills 100%, so what's going to happen here? And so I went to that thought of like one to many. And so that's where this idea came from, is that I wanted to build a strong online group, because I work with people all over the United States, Canada, Mexico, that kind of thing. So the best way to do that was through online. And so that's been my life goal now, is to do that, build a strong presence online and have group coaching, because I know that people grow and heal through groups. And they might feel that theirs is a unique situation. Don't get me wrong, it is, but somebody in the group can relate to that too. So there are usually, when we have things that we need to heal, it overlaps in many, many different areas. And it all comes down to healing. And I think we heal better in a community versus individually. So, and that's why I'm a big believer in what you do, because the same exact thing. We have groups, and I'm still learning when you're coaching somebody else. And I still see a little bit of me in everybody that's in our group. And so I learn from every bit of advice that you give to us in coaching. And I want that for my people too. And so that is where I'm at with that. And I've tried it once before. And then, like I said a little bit ago, I was kind of alluding to it, it wasn't my ideal paying clients. They were clients, yes, but not my ideal ones. And so we're doing the work now to get those ideal paying clients. I kind of jumped the gun to get it started again. And because I had like 20 people saying that they were interested, and of those 20, only 4 people showed up to it. And so now it's unrolling organically. But what I love about it is that I can change it as we do the work. After, I'm leaving it as is. I'm not touching it until after we're done building the ideal paying client. So, so right now I've got some people in there, which is great. And last night was an awesome preview of how I want it. Everybody was on the call last night. Everybody was interacting and sharing. It was awesome. I was like, this is how I want it to be.
Yes. Amazing.
Yes. And so I didn't even get a chance to share that with you. So that is what I'm looking for. That's what I want. I want people, my ideal clients, do the homework. They show up. They do, what they do, what I do. They're me, but just in a different body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see where that's going to go. And because in part of the group that we talked about, that we're now in, the business group, we're committed to not touching anything for 100 days. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've done. And it was the actual day. I launched it the actual day you wrote that. I was like, oh my God, I already launched it. And then that assignment popped up. So I'm like, okay, well, people are already signed up. I'm just leaving it there. Yeah. But I'm not encouraging I'm not advertising anybody to sign up for it. So
I love it.
Yeah. So it was funny. Yeah, it was amazing.
It is. Yeah. I love it. What do you think, 5 years from now, when you look back on this moment, what do you think your future self, how do you think she's going to describe it?
She's going to describe it as a great stepping stone to step into the next level of what she needs to be. It's going to be a great learning experience. And, she's going to look at it as a great way to know not what to do the next time. But if anything, she's definitely going to look back and say, oh, I remember this. This is when this. So I definitely learn from experiences, and it's not going to come from, I feel the first time I did it was out of desperation. This time it didn't feel like desperation. And I don't think it really was. It was more, I think, excitedness because so many people wanted to do it. Right. So I don't feel that it was desperation. So yeah, I think my future self is definitely going to know the difference. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think I need to experience both of them to know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Yeah. So if someone wants to improve their life through nutrition, tell them how they can connect with you.
Thank you. Yes, on all social media platforms. I've got Instagram at K8 for wellness. That's the letter K, the number 8 _4 wellness. And then Facebook, it's the K8 for wellness spelled the same way. And my website, k8forwellness.com. And then I also have a podcast of my own called the K8 for Wellness podcast.
Yay. Well, thank you for joining us and sharing this part of your journey. And I'm excited to talk next time. I'm moving. Kate and I have a conversation about her jean jacket that we're going to have. Oh, yes. I know we didn't get to it today, but we will get to it. I'm just going to keep moving it down because it's a great story. So
yes,
we're going to come back and hear that story and how Kate's business is evolving and all the awesome things that are happening in her life.
Thank you for having me, Cassie. Thanks for doing what you do.
My pleasure. And thank you all for checking us out. Make sure to check out Kate's next interview in the Year of Growth series.
Thank you for joining us on the Law of Attraction Manifesting Success Stories show. To learn how to attract more money into your life, go to your favorite book retailer and order Cassie's book, Manifest $10,000.